Donald Trump stepped onto the stage with his usual mix of confidence and swagger, the kind that seemed to command every room he entered. The crowd of reporters, photographers, and political observers leaned forward almost instinctively, ready for whatever line he might deliver next. Trump had built a reputation on being unpredictable, and part of the excitement or anxiety around his public appearances came from the simple fact that no one ever knew exactly what he was going to say. That unpredictability had become one of his trademarks, and it ensured that every word carried the potential to explode into the next headline. Asterisk, as he gripped the microphone, Trump's tone shifted into the familiar cadence his audiences knew well. His pauses, his emphases, and even the tilt of his head were all part of a performance honed over years in front of cameras. He didn't waste much time before directing his words at Barack Obama. The remark came out clean, sharp, and with a precision that made it impossible to mistake his intention. There was no attempt to soften the language or disguise it in polite phrasing. He said it exactly as he wanted, exactly as he knew it would be received, direct and unmistakable. Asterisk, the impact was immediate. The press room seemed to go still for a brief moment, as though everyone needed to process what had just been said. A few reporters raised their heads from their notepads, locking eyes with colleagues who wore the same expression of surprise. Even for Trump, who was known for taking bold shots at political opponents, this felt especially pointed. The fact that it was aimed at a former president, Barack Obama, made the remark heavier than the average quip or aside. Asterisk, Trump, however, showed no sign of second-guessing himself. He adjusted his jacket slightly, leaned into the microphone again, and continued speaking as if nothing unusual had happened. For him, this was business as usual. His approach to politics had always been built on bluntness and disruption. He thrived on breaking norms, on saying the things others in his position might carefully avoid, where another figure might have hesitated before bringing up Obama in such a direct and critical way. Trump treated it as a natural extension of his style. Asterisk, the context made the remark even more powerful. Trump and Obama had a long and visible history of rivalry. From the days when Trump loudly questioned Obama's background to the constant policy disputes that marked their overlapping time in the political spotlight, the two men had become symbols of opposing worldviews. Trump's rise had been fueled, in part, by challenging Obama's legacy. So when he chose to direct an insult at him in such a public way, it wasn't just a random comment. It tapped into years of tension that the public had already witnessed. Asterisk, reactions split almost immediately along familiar lines. Supporters of Trump saw the remark as another example of his willingness to tell it like it is. They cheered his lack of hesitation, arguing that he was one of the few public figures bold enough to say out loud what others thought privately. To them, his jab at Obama was a sign of strength, proof that he wasn't afraid to confront powerful figures, even a former president. Critics, on the other hand, saw the same words as reckless and divisive. They argued that it was yet another moment where Trump chose shock value over respect, and that targeting someone of Obama's stature crossed a line of decorum. Asterisk, still, no matter which side people were on, no one could deny that Trump had once again seized the narrative. With just a few words, he ensured that the news cycle would revolve around him and his relationship with Obama. Journalists rushed to push out alerts. Analysts began preparing commentary, and within minutes the remark was already spreading far beyond the walls of the room. Trump understood better than most how quickly words could travel in the modern media landscape, and he seemed to wield that knowledge like a tool. Asterisk. What made this particular moment so striking was the combination of spontaneity and calculation. On the surface, the insult sounded off the cuff, like something said without much forethought, but those who had watched Trump closely over the years knew that even his seemingly casual remarks were often carefully timed. He had a sense for when to drop a line, how to phrase it, and when to move on without lingering. The insult toward Obama fit that pattern perfectly, delivered with confidence, emphasized just enough to sting, then quickly brushed aside as he pressed forward with his remarks. Asterisk, the press conference could have focused on any number of other issues, but Trump's words about Obama overshadowed everything else. That was the power of his style. One pointed remark could shift the entire focus of an event, ensuring that his message would dominate every discussion afterward. For those who admired him, it was proof of his command of the political stage. For those who opposed him, it was another frustrating reminder of how effectively he could disrupt the conversation with just a single sentence. Asterisk. When Donald Trump delivered his pointed insult toward Barack Obama, it didn't take long for the atmosphere to shift from surprise to urgency. Reporters were still busy scribbling notes, and camera operators were adjusting their focus, but Obama's team had already begun to act. What set this moment apart wasn't just the sharpness of Trump's words, but the lightning speed at which Obama's side prepared a response. It was as if the remark had set off a silent chain reaction, one that triggered an immediate plan of action that had clearly been thought about long before that day. Asterisk. Those close to Obama knew that his style had always been deliberate. He was the kind of figure who weighed his words carefully, who considered the timing and the tone of his responses. But behind that calm public image was a group of advisors, strategists, and legal experts who understood the need to be quick. They had watched Trump for years. seen how fast a single comment could spread across headlines, and they weren't about to let a jab go unanswered. Their approach wasn't about trading insults. It was about crafting a reply that would carry as much weight as the original comment, if not more. Asterisk within seconds. Phones lit up, brief exchanges were made, and a plan was set in motion. What surprised many was not only the efficiency, but also the confidence with which Obama's team acted. They didn't hesitate or debate whether to respond, they already knew the answer. The rapid pace underscored a reality that had been clear for some time. When it came to Donald Trump, Obama's side was always prepared for sudden moments like this. Asterisk, the contrast between the two men became visible once again. Trump relied on spontaneity, the off-the-cuff remark that drew gasps and applause in equal measure. His words carried a rawness that made them stand out in a world of polished political statements. Obama, however, leaned into preparation. His team's ability to react so quickly was proof of a strategy built on anticipating Trump's unpredictability. Where Trump thrived on creating chaos, Obama aimed to show that he could meet it with discipline and structure. Asterisk, reporters covering the event found themselves caught between two breaking stories. First was the insult itself, sharp, memorable, and sure to dominate headlines. But before they could fully unpack Trump's words, news was already circulating about the speed of Obama's response. The 17-second window became symbolic. It highlighted the difference in how each man approached conflict, one with unfiltered boldness, the other with rapid calculation. Asterisk. Analysts later described the response as one of the most coordinated moves they had seen in recent political memory. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, but its speed carried a message all on its own. Obama didn't need to rush to a microphone or call a press conference. Instead, the precision of his team's reaction spoke louder than any speech. By acting immediately, they signaled that Trump's words weren't just another headline, they were an action that demanded an answer, and that answer was already underway. Asterisk for Trump's critics. The rapid response was celebrated as a sign that Obama wasn't about to let himself become an easy target. They pointed out that Trump's language had often gone unchecked in the past, and this time, the tables were turning. For Trump's supporters, however, the swiftness was framed differently. They argued that it showed how much power Trump's words still carried, that even a single comment could spark instant movement from someone like Obama. To them, the speed of the response was proof of Trump's ability to stay in control of the spotlight, no matter the context. Asterisk still. What couldn't be denied was how calculated the move was. Obama's side wanted to make it clear that they were prepared to meet Trump's style head-on. While Trump wielded his voice like a hammer, Obama's team wielded preparation like a shield. The 17 seconds it took to launch into action showed not only efficiency, but also an awareness of how quickly narratives form in today's world. In politics, letting even a few minutes go by without answering could shift public perception. Obama's team wasn't going to let that happen. Asterisk, the swiftness of the response also set the stage for what came next. It wasn't simply about matching Trump's energy, it was about reshaping the battlefield. By refusing to let the insult linger unanswered, Obama's team effectively flipped the storyline. Instead of the press focusing solely on Trump's words, attention turned almost immediately to how Obama had chosen to respond. That shift in focus was strategic, and it demonstrated once again how differently the two men approached the art of politics. Asterisk. Observers came away with the impression that neither man had changed much in style. Trump remained the master of spontaneous remarks, using his platform to seize attention in the moment. Obama, on the other hand, remained the strategist, leaning on discipline and efficiency to counter quickly. Their clash in this instance wasn't just about an insult and a reaction, it was about two very different ways of exercising power. And in the span of 17 seconds, the world saw those differences collide once again. Asterisk. When Donald Trump's words about Barack Obama settled into the air, many expected the usual cycle to follow, a wave of headlines, debates on television, and perhaps a measured comment from Obama at some later point. What no one anticipated was how drastically the script would change. Instead of meeting words with words, Obama chose to answer with action. His team quickly filed a lawsuit against Trump, attaching a staggering figure of $100 million to it. The move was so bold, so unexpected, that it immediately reframed the entire situation. What began as a verbal jab turned into a legal clash of historic scale. Asterisk for Obama. The choice was deliberate. He had always carried a reputation for being calm, strategic, and unwilling to be pulled into petty disputes. But he also understood the weight that words carried, especially when they came from someone like Trump. By filing a lawsuit, he sent a clear message that Trump's insult wasn't going to remain just another headline. It was going to be tied to real consequences. The size of the lawsuit was striking in itself. $100 million wasn't symbolic, it was a figure that demanded attention and forced the public to take the issue seriously. Asterisk, the legal move stood in stark contrast to Trump's style. Trump thrived on creating spectacle, on saying things that stirred conversation and placed him at the center of attention. Obama's response took that energy and redirected it into a more controlled, calculated arena. The courtroom. Where Trump relied on immediacy, Obama relied on structure. The lawsuit shifted the focus from a passing remark to a long-term legal battle, one that would involve lawyers, judges, and a process that could drag on for years. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about a single comment, it was about accountability, damages, and the limits of what could be said in public. The reaction was immediate and divided. Supporters of Trump saw the lawsuit as evidence of thin skin. They argued that Obama couldn't handle criticism, that he was overreacting to a comment that should have been brushed off. To them, the lawsuit only validated Trump's influence, proving that his words still carried the power to rattle even a former president. On the other hand, Obama's supporters praised the move as a demonstration of strength. They believed it showed that Obama wasn't going to allow Trump's remarks to spread unchecked, that he was willing to use every tool at his disposal to protect his name and his legacy. Media outlets scrambled to cover the development. What started as clips of Trump's remark quickly gave way to breaking news banners announcing the lawsuit. Legal experts were brought onto television panels to speculate on the basis of the case and its chances of success. The fact that Obama had chosen this route created a sense of gravity that no mere statement could have achieved. By filing in court, he had taken the issue out of the realm of opinion and into the realm of law, where facts and arguments would determine the outcome. The magnitude of the lawsuit also carried a symbolic weight. It wasn't just about money, it was about setting a precedent. By attaching such a large figure, Obama's team was signaling that insults of that nature carried real cost. It raised questions about the boundaries of political speech, about whether even a former president could be defamed without consequence. The legal system, rather than the court of public opinion, would now have a say in how far rhetoric could go before it crossed a line. For Trump. The lawsuit posed both a challenge and an opportunity. He had always painted himself as someone unafraid of conflict, someone who would never back down from a fight. Facing Obama in court would give him another stage, another chance to argue his case not just legally, but publicly. At the same time, the sheer scale of the lawsuit meant that this wasn't just another story to ride out until the next news cycle. It was a battle that could drain time, resources, and attention in ways that even Trump might not have anticipated when he first made the remark. Observers noted how perfectly the moment encapsulated the differences between the two men. Trump, relying on his gift for bold, spontaneous words, had sparked a firestorm in an instant. Obama, relying on structure and long-term planning, had transformed that firestorm into a legal challenge that promised to outlast the initial shock. The clash wasn't just about one man insulting another. It was about two very different visions of how power should be exercised. One favored immediacy and spectacle. The other favored preparation and control. In the end, what made the lawsuit so striking was not only the figure attached to it, but the way it altered the conversation. Trump had expected his remark to dominate headlines, but Obama's legal action quickly overshadowed it. Suddenly, the focus was no longer just on what Trump had said, but on how Obama had chosen to respond. And in choosing the courtroom over the microphone, Obama ensured that the battle would continue long after. The fallout from Donald Trump's insult toward Barack Obama, followed by the lightning-fast lawsuit, left the public in a state of fascination. What had started as a sharp remark quickly grew into a story much larger than either man's words. The impact of the situation was felt across television screens, newspapers, and every corner of social media. Analysts couldn't help but marvel at how quickly a single moment had turned into a national conversation about politics, law, and the clash of two figures who had already defined so much of modern American life. For the media. The event was a gift and a challenge at the same time. Trump's insult alone would have been enough to carry multiple news cycles. Reporters knew his remarks had a way of dominating the airwaves, stirring debate, and drawing endless commentary. But Obama's decision to respond with a $100 million lawsuit transformed the narrative entirely. Suddenly, it wasn't just about Trump's style or Obama's restraint. It was about the extraordinary escalation from words to legal warfare. Networks scrambled to balance their coverage, switching between replaying Trump's remark and dissecting the details of Obama's legal move. The public, too, split quickly in their reactions. Trump's supporters argued that the entire episode proved what they had been saying all along, that his words were powerful enough to shake even the most polished political figures. To them, Obama's lawsuit looked like an overreaction, a sign that Trump had gotten under his skin. They pointed out that Trump had always been direct, never afraid to speak his mind, and they admired him for that. The fact that Obama had responded so aggressively, in their eyes, only elevated Trump further. On the other side, Obama's supporters saw the lawsuit as a necessary stand. To them, Trump's insult crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. They praised Obama for refusing to let the remark linger as just another headline, for taking a step that showed accountability mattered even at the highest levels. The $100 million figure gave the response weight, making it clear that words had consequences. They argued that Trump's style of unchecked remarks had gone unchallenged for too long, and that Obama's move finally imposed a boundary. The divide between these perspectives reflected the broader political split that had defined the Trump-Obama rivalry from the beginning. Trump had built his political identity in large part on challenging Obama's legacy, questioning his decisions, and presenting himself as the antithesis of the calm, measured style that Obama embodied. Obama, in turn, had often taken a restrained approach, careful not to fuel Trump's theatrics. This time, though the roles were reversed, Trump had delivered a line meant to sting, but it was Obama who created the shock by turning it into a $100 million battle. Asterisk. The impact was not limited to partisan debates. Legal experts began weighing in, pointing out how rare it was for a former president to take such direct legal action against a rival. Some suggested the lawsuit could set a precedent, changing how political figures handled defamation in the future. Others warned that it risked dragging politics even further into the courtroom, where legal processes would replace debate and policy discussion. Regardless of opinion, all agreed that the scale of the lawsuit made it one of the most extraordinary responses ever seen. Between two figures of such stature, asterisk for Trump, the situation carried both risks and opportunities. On one hand, the lawsuit forced him to deal with a new layer of conflict that extended beyond words. It wasn't a battle he could win by dominating a press conference or landing a memorable line. It required lawyers, paperwork, and time, things that didn't always play to his strengths. On the other hand, the clash with Obama kept him exactly where he thrived, at the center of national attention. Even in the context of a lawsuit, Trump knew how to frame himself as the fighter, the one being unfairly targeted, the figure who refused to bow to pressure. Asterisk. The impact on Obama was equally complex. Filing the lawsuit made him look decisive to his supporters, a man unwilling to let insults tarnish his name. But it also placed him in the middle of a legal spectacle that would be dissected endlessly. Every detail, every motion filed, would be scrutinized in ways few former presidents had ever experienced. Still, the boldness of the move reinforced his image as someone who was unwilling to be passive when the stakes were high. Asterisk. As the days passed, the story showed no sign of fading. Commentators pointed out that the clash revealed not just a personal rivalry, but a broader reflection of the political climate in America. Trump's ability to ignite controversy with a single remark, and Obama's ability to counter with swift, calculated action symbolized two very different approaches to leadership. The impact lay not only in what was said or filed, but in how it underscored the nation's deep divisions and fascination with the personalities who shaped its politics. Asterisk. As the dust settled around the clash between Donald Trump and Barack Obama, one truth became undeniable. This was not just another exchange of political barbs. It was a collision of two very different worlds, one driven by sharp, spontaneous remarks, and the other defined by measured, calculated responses. What began as a moment of insult had quickly evolved into something far larger, a legal and cultural turning point that captured the nation's attention. The $100 million lawsuit was more than a number. It was a declaration that words carried weight, and that even in the high-stakes arena of politics, there were boundaries that could not be ignored. Asterisk for Trump. The moment reinforced his reputation as someone unafraid to stir controversy, to speak in a way that guaranteed attention. His supporters rallied around him, seeing the insult as just another example of his boldness and his refusal to play by traditional rules. They argued that if Obama was truly unaffected, he would have brushed the comment aside. Instead, they claimed, the lawsuit proved that Trump still had the ability to get under his skin. For them, the entire episode was another reminder that Trump's presence loomed large, even outside the office he once held. Asterisk for Obama, the response was an equally defining moment. By escalating the situation into a courtroom battle, he underscored his belief that respect and accountability mattered, even at the highest levels of public life. Supporters viewed his move as a powerful stand against rhetoric that had gone unchecked for too long. The $100 million figure turned the situation into more than just a personal defense. It became a statement about leadership, legacy, and the responsibility to draw a line when insults crossed into defamation. Asterisk. The broader public reaction revealed much about the state of the country itself. Some saw the clash as an unfortunate sign of how personal politics had become, with battles shifting from the podium to the courtroom. Others saw it as necessary, proof that even figures like Trump could be held accountable for their words. No matter where one stood, it was impossible to deny the impact. Media outlets continued to replay the moment. Headlines dissected every development, and conversations at dinner tables and workplaces circled back to the story. Asterisk. What made the episode truly unforgettable was how it highlighted the differences between the two men while tying them together in yet another chapter of their rivalry. Trump thrived on immediacy, throwing out remarks that sparked instant reactions. Obama thrived on strategy, turning those remarks into a legal confrontation that could outlast any news cycle. In that contrast, the nation saw two competing visions of leadership and power, colliding in real time. Asterisk, as history looks back on the moment, it may not be remembered simply as an insult or even as a lawsuit. It will be remembered as an example of how words can ripple into actions, how remarks can lead to consequences far beyond their initial delivery. It showed that the clash between Trump and Obama was more than a rivalry. It was a reflection of America itself, divided, energized, and endlessly captivated by the battle of personalities at its highest levels. And whether one sided with Trump's defiance or Obama's legal stand, no one could deny that the encounter left a mark too deep